All right, here we go. The World War II, big time period. We're actually going to try to go 1918 to 1933 as quick as we can here. Um, this is a big time period. This is um, World War One, and then the society afterwards. So 1848, you had all these revolutions from 1848. As time goes on, 1870 especially, they start to respond to people's needs. Imperialism, scramble for Africa, all that kind of stuff happens. And then World War One hits. Well, why does World War One hit? World War One hits because of alliances. It's a simple little um, I guess I don't even have that on here. That should be a different thing here. It's a simple assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Obviously, it's a big deal, but the alliances and the fact that people were excited about war and everybody thought this war was going to be short and sweet, they all go to war. And obviously, it turns out to be very, very different than they expected. So this is going to be the society afterwards. You can look up the World War One stuff. There's not a lot of really actual during the war. If you're going to review something, review the home front and how it changes society and then a lot of this stuff afterwards. So here are some topics from this time period, 1918 to about 1945. Um, Sigmund Freud, land changes. So after 1918, you get a lot of land changes like Yugoslavia, Poland's restored, Czechoslovakia, things like that. Philosophy like existentialism. Under existentialism, You should know Nietzsche. Art changes from Dada, Cubism to Surrealism, Picasso, defining fascism. You almost always get a question on the Treaty of Versailles and how that messes up things for the future. The Provisional Government of Russia. 1917 March is a big deal. 5 year plans of Stalin are always on here. You get questions about the Great Depression, like what did it lead to? What was the impact that it had? You're going to get some scientific stuff that happens also in here. More physics. This is a big physics age. Picasso, Spanish Civil War, those two go together. Women's jobs and women getting the right to vote. Women during the war having jobs, women after the war getting the right to vote. Review existentialism. I know I already said that, but that is a big one that I find very confusing and tough to do. It's a good one for you to look over. Post World War One economics are typically a topic also. So those are about 10 different things to study. Here's a bunch of little facts that go with it. So quick little recap of the post-war society. All right, post-war society. The name gives it away right there. Age of Anxiety. I like this title from a different book, The Cruelly Injured Mind. How people were questioning society. All right. This is another existentialist right here, Paul Valery, and kind of reflects the attitude. Okay, these are a bunch of jokes on existentialism because I said I find it very confusing, very difficult. The problem with it is there's no correct or one way to summarize it. Basically, it's very pessimistic. It's an 1870s and 80s and 90s kind of philosophy that no one bought into during that good time. They buy into this time. Same with Freud. Freud's mostly an 1880s, 1890s guy, much more popular 1920s when you see how bad things can become. So, what do you have in this age of anxiety? You have existentialism, but you also have people turning back to the church. Common theme, we've said it 20 times. When life is bad, people go to church. When life is good, they don't go to church. Something bad happens, they go back to church. Well, something bad happened, people go back to church. But you got to remember that makes this different, though. It's not as simple as that. What makes this different is the idea of ignoring the supernatural. Ignore the miracles. Talk about faith and morality and how to make the world a better place. That's what churches do. Why do they ignore a lot of the miracles and stuff? Because of science, because of everything behind. If I can reach it, there we go. All these physics changes, the atom, and all the other discoveries of these people, Max Planck, Albert Einstein, Ernest Rutherford, all those kind of guys. Basically, science has gone from, that's why I put this question up here, science to date. This is another example of questions to review. How do things change? Science till World War I was positive. It was making positive change. It was progress. It explained things like even heliocentric versus geocentric. Crushed the church, didn't really mess with the common man. This is stuff, it's scary. It makes mass weapons of mass destruction. People don't get it. You're telling me that there's these little atoms I can't see. So this scares people. It adds a lot to the age of anxiety because most people don't get it. All right. Freud, pretty common, pretty simple. You know a lot about him. Literature is interesting. Okay, 1922 is considered one of the most revolutionary years in literature. The way people wrote becomes very, very different. Here's some writers over there on the right you can look up. The big theme here is stream of consciousness. What are people thinking? And the thoughts are oftentimes disturbing. James Joyce's Ulysses is a revolutionary book. When I talk about 1922, some people consider that the book that changed um, literature forever, more modern in the way they wrote. So, how does this add to the age of anxiety? Stream of consciousness, getting into people's thoughts. All right. Art is more these over here. Art is more surrealism, Dadaism, and Cubism. But as I've said before, things change gradually. So Impressionism and Post-Impressionism are the two between Romantics of the 1840s and 50s, and Cubism and Dadaism of the 1890s, 1900s, and Surrealism of the 1920s. So you can see, or you should see, the gradual change over time, from Renaissance to Baroque, from Baroque to um, romantics to impressionism, post-impressionism, and it's all about emotion. These guys here are letting you determine what you want to feel. You pick, you see what you want to see, and you feel what you want to feel. By the time we get here and here, it's disturbing feelings. What are you feeling? What should you feel? What's right? What's wrong? And that's what's very disturbing in this era of disturbingness. Okay, so here's just a little quick thing we did. Um, yeah, it would go clockwise. So it would start with this, move on to Baroque, Romantics around 1840, Impressionism 1870-ish. This is going to be Cubism, 1880s, 1890s, and this is the stuff that's more disturbing of the 1900s, post-World War I especially. Music, we looked at music or listened to music, very disturbing. Our musicians in the class talked about doesn't make sense. Okay, that's exactly what they were going for. Abandon traditional stuff. Atonal, meaning there's no tone. Like when my daughter sings, there's no tone. I love her. She's a terrible singer. Okay, we listen to a little bit of the Rite of Spring. It's not your typical birth of spring, happy butterflies, rabbits, pastel colors. It's disturbing, it's confusing, it's sharp sounds. That reflects this age of anxiety. That reflects this um, disturbing world of confusion in the aftermath of World War I and how terrible people felt. This really isn't too disturbing, but it's very different. Okay, it's very different. The Bauhaus is going to combine applied art and fine art. You can design the building and decorate the building. Walter Gropius is the name to remember. You don't need to remember Frank Lloyd Wright, but Walter Gropius. If you see a question, it's probably on functionalism in the upper left-hand corner there, just what it sounds like. You make a building, you make furniture to serve a purpose. This chair is a great example. What's a chair for? Sitting. Supposedly this is perfect. Comfortable for your butt, place for your arms, chair's done, nothing else to it. Functional. Functionalism. The Bauhaus was big with that. This is the time period. Okay? Movies and radio are more of a positive. So architecture is kind of emotionless. Radio is much more positive and upbeat. Same thing with movies. Movies are an escape. Get away from the harsh reality of these terrible times. Leni Riefenstahl, lower right-hand corner. Um, kind of mentioned her a few times. She's big. She's a Hitler movie maker. Um, but she's just died probably like 10 years ago. And the big thing with Leni Riefenstahl is she was doing things that no one else was doing at the time. The way she videoed, the way she filmed, simple things we talked about, like people on roller skates rolling through with the parade when they filmed Triumph of the Will, which is a big Nazi rally, so that you got more of a movement feel than someone standing there and turning. So she's very revolutionary, very cutting edge, very modern, really great filmmaker. They study her, today even though she's an example of, making videos for Hitler. All right. And then you got the Treaty of Versailles. This is a big deal. This is something you need to study. You need to spend time on this part of history. the good and the bad. All right. Originally, it's terrible. The reparations, War Guild Clause 231. John Maynard Keynes is telling us how bad this is going to be. You should review what people wanted. Remember, the British wanted to trade again, but didn't because of all the dead. The French wanted to punish. The Italians are upset because they didn't get anything. Look closely at the Treaty of Versailles. Compare it to Congress of Vienna. The Germans are not here at Versailles. The French, which lost the Napoleonic Wars, were there. Big difference. Things are bad. This is bad. Occupation of Ruhr, the Germans wanting their money, cause inflation, all that kind of stuff. I made this little slide with Gustav Stresemann. 1923, you have positive times. Remember, this is all Weimar Germany. Weimar Germany's very modern. Adolf Hitler hates modern. Adolf Hitler is going to get rid of modern. Remember the art we looked at. He has that degenerate art exhibit where he gets rid of art that he thinks is terrible. Well, Gustav Stresemann is a good guy during the time of Weimar, 1923, that launches a lot of positive reforms. Here's a bunch of things you could review. The right-hand side, Locarno and Kellogg-Briand Pact, those are political. These are all economic. Sliding plans, well, this is political too, I guess. These two are economic. This is a a plan of reparations. Let the Germans pay what they can pay. Instead of just sticking them with massive amounts which are ruining them, let's let them pay what they can pay. Remember this here too? U.S. pays Germany, they pay France, France pays us, Germany pays the British, British pays us, gets money flowing, makes everything better. Okay, Hitler's doing his thing at the same time. But all this stuff on the right, the French and the British and the Germans, you have other parties. You have communists, you have socialists. Well, where does this come from? This comes from the 1840s and 1850s. Industrial age is growing. And then in the 1870s, 1880s, workers and workers' rights and options to what these people are promising. Options to what these governments were doing, I'm trying to say. And so you're going to get a lot of different people pushing for power, and how do you deal with it? The British become much more socialist. The French become weaker. The Germans are divided, and eventually opens the door for guys like Adolf Hitler. The Depression messes everything up. The big thing with the Depression is the issues it causes for the door it opens, I should say, for Hitler and Mussolini and those kind of guys. All right, Scandinavians do it very different. You can read about that, how they just spend money they don't have. The French and English try to do it differently, and it fails. Okay. Then all of this stuff is going to open the door for World War II, and what Adolf Hitler obviously is going to do when Adolf Hitler does what he does, which is what we will get to next.